glad to have Mr. Andy Anderson from Okolona, who is going to talk to us tonight about the Battle of Okolona and the up-and-coming anniversary reenactment in Okolona. He is a cavalry reenactor along with David with the 7th Tennessee Cavalry. Also, he's a cattleman. If y'all, the price of just ground beef's $2.18, so you can imagine how much beef is nowadays. He's a rancher, I guess you would say. Also, he lives on part of the Okolona battlefield. So, who more better to tell us about the battle? And how many people have ever stopped at Okolona going through the cemetery over there? Everybody passes it and says, you know, someday I'm going to go stop in there and look. Here's the man going to tell us all about it. Andy Anderson.
I'd like to thank y'all for having us tonight. Enjoyed a nice meal and see a lot of friends out in the audience there. We always appreciate y'all coming to Tupelo. Y'all furnished us with some nice speakers up at Tupelo camp. I'd like to start out with the start of the Okolona battle, I guess, is really when General Forrest had a terrible disagreement with General Bragg over in Georgia. General Bragg had just lost a great opportunity at the Battle of Chickamauga, and General Forrest, well, all the big officers under General Bragg, they wanted to get rid of him. He's just an incompetent commander, but he's a close personal friend and classmate of Jefferson Davis. They just couldn't hardly shake him. He had ruined the Army of Tennessee. Well, General Forrest had finally had enough, so he went to bid farewell to General Bragg, and y'all probably read his talk before. He took his doctor and his cousin with him, Dr. J.B. Cowan. I don't know if you've taken your doctor with you to go see someone you want to go out, but they reached General Bragg's headquarters tent then, and when Bragg extended his hand to Forrest, and Forrest refused to shake hands. He's standing stiff and erect before the general. Forrest proceeded to unburden himself. I am not here to pass civilities or compliments with you. You commenced your cowardly and contemptible persecution of me soon after the Battle of Shiloh, and you have kept it up ever since. You did it because I reported to Richmond facts while you reported damn lies. You robbed me of my command in Kentucky, men that I armed and equipped from the enemies of our country. You drove me into West Tennessee in the winter of 1862 with a 2nd Brigade I had organized with improper arms and without sufficient ammunition, although I made repeated applications for same. When, in spite of all this, I returned with my command, well equipped by captures, and now this 2nd Brigade, organized and equipped without thanks to you or the government, you have taken it from me. I have stood your meanness as long as I intend to. You have played the part of a damn scoundrel and are a coward, and if you were any part of a man, I would slap your jaws and force you to resent it. I mean, if you slap somebody's jaws, you're not going to force them to resent it. This is 1860s talk. You may as well not issue any orders to me, for I will not obey them, and I will hold you personally responsible for any further indignities you endeavor to inflict on me. If you ever again try to interfere with me or cross my path, it will be at the peril of your life. This is the it's the number 2 man in the whole Confederacy. He's in charge of the Army of Tennessee, and you would thought he would have been arrested and court-martialed, but don't mess with General Forrest. So we're moving on. So he's out of the Army of Tennessee. He's written a letter to President Davis. They knew they had a good man. He's coming over to try to help North Mississippi. We're just being raided and just whittled down a piece at a time. They're having a hard time over here. The Yankees are coming down and burning and stealing their way all the way across Mississippi. So they're going to send General Smith to try to straighten them out. Well, General Forrest, they sent just a skeleton force. He had to make his own army, but the folks that came with him were McDonald's Battalion, 139 men, Morton's artillery battery, 67 men. They had 4 steel rifle guns. They had the bullpups at some point, but I'm not sure these are the bullpups or where they came later. Escort company, 65 men. Staff, 8 men. They had a total of 310 men with 279 effectives. I guess some of them were wounded. So they make their way to November 4th to Okolona, Mississippi. Forrest assumed command of the West Tennessee Battalion. Later on, he acquired Colonel R.V. Richardson's men, 330 men. Then they made to Okolona as Colonel Jeffrey Forrest came in from North Alabama with 150 men. Then Colonel Tyree Bell came from West Tennessee. He raised 600 men. Colonel J.J. Newsom, another 650 men, and Colonel W.W. Faulkner, 12th Kentucky, I believe around 360 men. They had coming through, they went up into West Tennessee. They're showing the flag, and the arm of the federal occupier had been very heavy. These young guys in West Tennessee and North Mississippi, they were ready to volunteer for the Confederate Army. They came back from West Tennessee with 300 hogs and 200 cattle, and they finally got 3,000 men from West Tennessee. They were up there. They started on their way back just before Christmas. The Yankees had an enormous force to hit them off. They started back from around Jackson, Tennessee on the 23rd December. The federal forces, the raid against them were 15,000 men. Under Major General Stephen A. Hurlbut. The brigadier generals were Joseph A. Mauer, who would later show up at Tupelo, Benjamin Grierson, who had just led the raid through Mississippi, that's depicted in the Horse Soldiers, and Andrew J. Smith, who would later on also at the Battle of Tupelo, and William Seward Smith, who would play a big role at the Battle of Okolona. General Forrest has made it down. They took him down to Meridian, assigned him even more folks. He's going to be the head of the Northern Cavalry Department. He's been promoted to Major General. He's going to have McCullough's 2nd Brigade, and he's going to put Richardson 1st Brigade, and Tyree Bell 3rd Brigade, and Jeffrey Forrest, his baby brother, who's just in his 24th Brigade, the Alabama soldiers. At the same time, General William Tecumseh Sherman had devised this enormous plan. They're going to have a pincer movement. They're going to bring down the horse soldiers. They're going to come down from Memphis, LaGrange, and rendezvous at Meridian, Mississippi. General Sherman's coming across from Vicksburg with 20,000 infantry. They don't have any infantry in Memphis and don't have any cavalry at Vicksburg, so they're going to rendezvous at Meridian, tear it up. The South has enormous railroad yards in Meridian. All their locomotives, rail cars, just mountains of grain, ammunition, horses, all this is stored at Meridian. It's a big logistics base. Well, General Sherman does his part. He, as usual, is the best at burning and destroying. They're like terrorists. They come over from Vicksburg, and they stay in Meridian for weeks, tearing up the railroads, burning everything up. Well, he's waiting on General Smith, but General Smith is tied up in LaGrange. He's got 7,500 men, and it should be enough, because General Forrest hardly had 3,000, but he's called for extra help, so he gets the general from up in Kentucky, but they're tore up with the, they can't get across the high water. So he's coming down there, they're flooded up there. Had George Waring Jr. has, I believe, 2,000 men trying to get down from Kentucky, but this time of year, there's a lot of floods and a lot of the rivers couldn't get across them. So they're finally delayed. They don't get, I think they don't leave Memphis till February the 11th. Well, Sherman's already down there, well on his way of destruction at Meridian, so it takes Smith like nearly 2 weeks to come from Memphis to Pontotoc even. He's moving very slow on the way back here, but as it turned out, he can make his way back 10 times as fast with somebody nipping at his heels. So Sherman, he's by the time Smith gets to Okolona, Sherman's already turned back to go to Vicksburg. General William Seward Smith, he's a engineer. He built railroads and bridges, a right good civil engineer. I believe he built the first railroad bridge across the Mississippi River after the war. But it turned out General Forrest he's got the skier on him from the start. Smith reached Okolona February the 18th, and and Okolona's a big garrison town, kind of like Meridian. Smith, he burned over 2 million bushels of corn. They had it stacked up and down the track and stacked outside and made the tarps. He burned all this priceless food for the Confederacy. 2,000 bales of cotton. He stole 3,000 horses and mules, and hundreds of private homes were burned. People robbed of everything they had, even the women. They stole the women's clothes and haul them back up north. The women's clothing and jewelry, furniture, anything that wasn't nailed down, the Yankees is stealing it and You got women and children walking the road where that morning they've been in nice warm homes. This is in the winter, wet, raining. They just turned them out on the road, burned their houses. All they had was clothes on their backs. The Northern armies were behaving like the Germans in World War II. It's just a scorched earth. They did us just like they did the Russians. Terrible atrocities against the civilians. Smith finally met up with General Forrest at West Point, the Battle of Ellis Bridge. I believe it's on the 21st of February. And well, there's a whole different thing. These soldiers have seen all these homes burned, the women outraged, so they tore into them like tigers. Jeffrey Forrest hit them at the bridge, and General Smith, even though he's got 3 times as many men, he's got 9,000 men with repeating rifles, breech-loading rifles. The best modern artillery is one of the finest. It was the greatest cavalry force that had been assembled in the Western Hemisphere up to that time. So they pitched into them at West Point, but neither side knew how many the other one had. Well, Forrest is wearing him out down there by the bridge, and Smith is nervous. There's a real swampy area, the Succotankey Swamp, so he decides to, maybe it's time to get back to Memphis. As Forrest more than he bargained for. Forrest is wearing him out. He knows all the terrain. He's got local boys. He's got people fighting for their homes, their families, so they have a lot of incentive. So Forrest tears him up, so Smith's going to try to get back to Okolona, and Smith's thinking, well, if I leave him alone, maybe he'll leave me alone. Forrest doesn't think that way. So they head back to Okolona. They finally, that night, they fought all that night till they had to quit. Some of the Confederate troops had fired on their own men in the confusion, night fighting, but Smith didn't, they kept them up all night. So on the 22nd, which is the same date we'll be done the Battle of Okolona, it's exactly 150 years later, Smith is going through Okolona. He makes it through the north part of Okolona where General Forrest is outrunning him, and he's flanked him up there by there was an old black college at Okolona, so he's tearing him up there. Smith is getting faster and faster, moving on the way down there he's moving like a turtle, but on the way back he's moving like a rat. Smith on the way down there, he's a big fancy general, a lot of gold braid and brass on, general stars every which way, but as the things move on, he puts on the uniform of pride. He didn't want to be caught, he didn't want to be a target. The snipers are emptying the saddles of the federal officers that had on a lot of fancy loud color stuff, they didn't last long. Just made a big target, so the smart guys tried to look just like the press. So they finally clear Okolona. The Federals, as they went, back then they had the fences were all made of rails, wooden rails, and they would tear those rails down and make forts across the road. The country's heavily wooded. If they could just block the road, it's hard to get around them. So they'd make a stand. The best soldier the Yankees had was this George Waring Jr. He's another civil engineer. Back then, the best education was at the U.S. Military Academy, so you went there, and the engineer was the best thing to be in. Robert E. Lee was in the engineering corps. This George Waring Jr., he's from New York City. He's the man that laid out Central Park. Famous guy, engineer there in New York, but he's facing the Confederates. He's a very rear guard action. He was a very capable soldier. I have his book, Whip and Spur, which is available, and he gives a good first-hand account of the Battle of Okolona. So they headed out further. They finally clear Okolona. They're making rear guard actions. They lose their cannon on the city limits of Okolona. They're trying to get across a creek and get bogged down in the mud. So the artillery guys, they tried to spike the guns, some of them, and they cut the leather traces and rode out on the artillery horses, had to abandon the guns. So they headed on out where we live, which is about 6 miles out of Okolona. That's the big battle out there. It's an old extinct town of Prairie Mountain. It predates Okolona, so they're going to make a big stand there in the town there, and they're trying to send Jeffrey Forrest to go around them, and he charged with the Alabama cavalry against this big fort right there on the very city limits of the town of Okolona, and he's right up close to the federal lines, and he's shot through the neck, just nearly shoots his head off, and he falls, he's dead before he hits the ground. General Forrest is right behind him and runs up in the middle of the federal fire going that which way, and as his favorite brother dies, he's holding him in his arms, and he's just nearly, he's crying. He raised the boy. He was the only one in the family that was college educated. He's seen him to Ole Miss. He was hardly 25 years old. Jeffrey Forrest was born after old man Forrest had died. He was, what's the word, posthumous child. He'd had the best of education. He married into a real nice family at Aberdeen. Sally Dice, her daddy was a big steamboat captain, so he gave charge of the body to this physician again. He's always got his doctor with him. Wherever General Forrest is, it's good to have a doctor with him. Right at that time, after that, General Forrest horse was shot and killed, so they immediately start looking for another horse. General Forrest, in the course of the war, he had 31 horses killed under him, but he was one better. He had killed 32 Yankees hand-to-hand fighting. He was the only leader of an army that exceeded his record was like one in the Middle Ages, Henry V back in England. He had one up on him. He killed more Yankees than the horse. If I were a horse, though, and if they're telling you that you know, this General Forrest horse on the front lines have been killed, and you are the replacement horse, well, that's time to start horse sweating. You know, your life expectancy is pretty bad. You know, he's right up in the thick of the fight. General Forrest never was go yonder and do it. It was follow me. So he goes back, and they're about to capture him. He runs up, charges the line single-handedly. So they finally call for reinforcements. One of the Confederate generals shot in the hand, and he takes his bandage off, bloody hands, and tells the other troopers there in shock. The general's surrounded by Yankees, but he sends back for extra help and says, men, you'll see your general killed. So finally they got the 7th Tennessee, came up with Colonel Duckworth, and that was General Forrest's first unit. He joined as a private, he and Jeffrey, at the start of the war. So they came up with the general and forced the Yankees to give way on this final fortification. So the Yankees abandoned that rear guard action. They're headed on up toward Pontotoc, and there's a big open field there, and they form another barricade, and the Confederates are coming on pretty fast, and they charge the line, and the Yankees made a countercharge, and the Confederates had started to run out of, well, they were just out of rifle ammunition, but they had the 6 guns on the saddles, and Yankees came with 100 yards of them, and they wore them out with the 6-shooters. They would have 2 to 6 pistols, so they started emptying saddles, and Yankees came in them 4 times. The last time they got in among the Confederate lines, but there were not enough of the Yankees left to take the position, so they had to head on back toward New Albany, and I believe they got across the bridge at New Albany and burned the bridge behind them. The Tallahatchie River was in flood, and the Confederates could not follow because the water was too deep, and they were out of ammunition, and of course a lot of horses down. A lot of the soldiers were used to walking, but the Federals had made a astoundingly good time with the Confederates driving them back, so they made it back to Memphis just a matter of days, and they said it was a matter of the utmost shame. They had lost all their cannons, all their wagons, all those supplies, thousands and thousands of guns, pistols, muskets, and mountains of supplies. It was a matter of shame from then on. And Smith left the army after that. He'd been defeated by a force 1/3 his size. I have the figures here. I believe the Confederate losses were 27 killed. They found right then, and 97 wounded, 20 missing. And the U.S. losses, 54 killed, 179 wounded, and 155 missing. It was a humiliating defeat for the Federal forces, very similar to Price's Crossroads, and people study these battles to this day. Even during World War II, the German future General Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, he was with the United States, he was with the German embassy in the United States studying in Washington, and he admired General Forrest for the way he disposed his infantry, cavalry, artillery. He came and walked every one of his fields and took extensive notes, and he used his same tactics, the General Forrest tactics, against the British in North Africa, as again, he would be outnumbered 3 or 4 to 1, but he'd just wear the British out every time. He used the tactics of the cannon had always been in the rear, but General Forrest just put them up in the front like giant shotguns. They rolled forward with the troops, and the Germans used this tactic with the 88 flak guns, the anti-aircraft guns, and the British just knew to them. General Forrest said he liked fighting the West Point graduates, the generals, because they were so predictable. That he hardly had maybe a 4th or 5th grade education, but he had a native country. He had managed to educate himself. He had read, and he knew his terrain, and he knew his opponents. It's like he knew what they were going to do. And he said you had to be aggressive. You charged with what you had. If you were just there with a few men in the right spot, as he said, you had to get there fastest with the mostest. Are there any questions about this battle?
get those brochures back here, Andy, we'll pass them around.
Okay, okay. We will be having our reenactment in, about 2 weeks. We'd like for y'all to come.
What's the date on that and time?
It's the same time as the original battle, February 21st, this Friday, it's gonna be our school day. All the school kids are coming down. They'll start that morning, I think, from the school at 9 to 2. And then the main battle will be after dinner around 1 o'clock Saturday. And then Sunday's battle will be at 2 o'clock. It's exact dates as the original battle.
One more thing, the auction, when is the auction?
The auction, I believe, starts around 3:30 to 4 at the Okolona National Guard Armory. We have Dwight Stevens from Aberdeen. They have a lot of things there. He furnished the Jefferson Davis home at Beauvoir. He's a world famous
This is
auctioneer.
Saturday though, about 3:34.
It is Saturday around 3:30 to 4, and I believe they'll have food available at the auction at where the National Guard Armory. It's where 32 and 41 come together. The battle is about 6 miles northwest of Okolona on 41. It's between Okolona and Pontotoc. 5 miles from the intersection of the Natchez Trace and 41. It's right on the side of 41. It's on the north side of 41. They have the deep green. Well, they have a lot of signs. It's on hundreds of acres that's been bought by the National Civil War Preservation Trust. It's still in pretty much a wilderness condition.
Is that where the sign is where Jeffrey was killed?
That's correct. It's just, he was killed pretty close to the city limits. There's an old cemetery there. We have some Confederate soldiers buried in the cemetery. David and I put up a tombstone there. There's a Captain J.E. Turner of the 1st Mississippi Cavalry. He was a captain of Company I. He's in there with his family, the Gillum family's buried there. The Yankees burned up Little Barry Gillum. He owned like 20,000 acres all around Okolona, and these Yankee deserters called him, and he wouldn't tell. He supposed there was a lot of gold buried around there, and they captured him and tortured him, trying to make him tell where the gold was, and he wouldn't talk. There was a big old barn there, and he ran and hid in the barn, and so the Yankees were in kind of a hurry. They just set the barn on fire. He was under a crib or something there, and he never came out. So supposedly there's a lot of gold buried on the battlefield.
Andy, are you gonna have any speakers besides the reenactment?
Yes, we'll have Dr. Brandon Beck. He will be speaking at the battle there. Several like the writer of this book, he spoke at one battle. I think this Liney E. Manis, PhD, it's the best forest book, an untutored genius. I helped him on this book. He came to he would always come to the battle.
What about Sutlers? You gonna have like a?
Yes, we'll have Sutlers there.
Was the Battle of West Point part of this campaign?
Yes, it was the beginning, really, the first large-scale engagement at Ellis Bridge. There's a big monument down there. The Dobbs brothers put in a monument down there back in the early 90s. They started the Battle of Okolona. Nathan Dobbs and James Dobbs, they started the Battle of Okolona in 1989. That's where my reenactment career started. I was with the Dobbs brothers out there.
All right, any more? Thank you so much.